Did you meet Candace?
So meeting Candace is an interesting story. Candace was like the super, super hot New York City girl with like the ultra fancy boyfriend. And I was like this fucking kind of dope who had no money, but was like,
no offense, Casey. I know who you are.
You don't know who I was in 2004. In 2004, I was just like this fucking maniac. It's like this 23-year-old maniac who like, I lived in an SRO, a single room occupancy. Oh. So I had no bathroom and no kitchen in my apartment. It was just a 12 by 12 box. Oh, the bathroom was down the hall.
Yeah.
Like you go in there and sometimes there'd be needles on the floor. Like just don't step on them. Like sometimes there'd be blood all over the sink. Like, well, I'll brush my teeth tomorrow. Yeah. Like that was my lifestyle. And like, she's this really glamorous girl. And I found out she broke up with her boyfriend. I just like cold called her. I'm like, hey, you remember me? And she's like, I think so. Who are you? Are you the guy with the kid? And I'm like, yeah, you want to go out?
Guy with the kid. By the way, it's funny. You know someone's voice, like when you've watched enough of them, and I can totally hear her saying that. Are you the guy with the kid?
That was like 27-year-old Candace. Yeah. And so she wouldn't go out with me or call me back. And then Van and I were both invited to a bar mitzvah in Houston. And Candace is from, like, she grew up in Houston. She's born in South Africa. She grew up in Houston.
I'm dying to know about her background because I can't put my finger on it. If it's blood diamonds or like where her family's like.
It's not that sexier intro. It sort of is. Like they're South African. Like they're all South African. When
she born and raised there.
Yeah, but she they emigrated to the United States when she was fairly young because shit started to go really south. This is when like Mandela was in jail. Like the whites were trying to stay in power down there. Mm-hmm. And her family, like some of her family history, like they fought on behalf of the native Black South Africans. Like they're good. Her
good
lineage,
side of the fence of history to be on.
They're on the right side of the fence, but it got very tumultuous, very scary for them. So her parents are like not quite as sexy as blood diamonds. They're physicians. Her dad's a doctor.
Damn it.
Sorry, I know, not as romantic, but and at the time they were like they needed doctors in Australia and they needed doctors in Texas. And if you passed the board in South Africa, they would sort of accept that in either of those two locations. And her mother fucking hates the Australian accent. So like, I guess we're moving to Texas.
Oh, wow.
So they like upped and left their whole life behind in South Africa and moved to Houston, lived in a hotel until her dad kind of figured it out. And she was raised in Houston and would spend, like a decent percentage of her years back in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like the story of it that really hits it for me was like her family's house burned down in Texas. Like came home, everything's gone. And her and her sister were like 4 and 6 or something like that. And her mom brought her to Target, bought him a backpack, bought him clothes, filled the backpack up with clothes, brought them to the airport and put these 2 little kids on an airplane by themselves and just sent them to South Africa. Because like, what were her parents supposed to do? They had no place to live. They had to figure out, like their whole life just burned down literally. So they just shipped the kids off to South Africa. And hearing Candace tell the story of being like 6 or 8-year-old just flying to Cape Town by herself, that's like a 20-hour flight.
No, for me, it was a 33-hour flight. It was like through London.
Yeah, through London's the quickest way now. But in any event, so like that was sort of her upbringing. So when we got invited to the bar mitzvah in Texas, she was like, if you want to stay at my parents' house, you can. And we're like, do I?
She's not there.
She was there. She was also invited to the bar mitzvah because she knew the person because they were from Houston.
Oh, wow.
The kid's dad was a patron of the art. So he sort of knew us because Van and I were in the art world.
Yeah.
She knew him because of a similar connection. So we're staying at her house and I was like, fuck, man, this is all I need. Like, I got this girl. I got her cornered. Like, I got this. And like Bert, you should know, like, she rejected me really coldly.
Yeah.
And I always say to her, like, we see 2 kids later who had the last fucking laugh here, lady.
Yeah. Oh, like, what's great is knowing who this sounds, I hope this comes off right. Knowing who Candace is just from vlogs, the fact that she married you shows you how good of a person she is. Because in my head, I kept going, Casey is not from the same pedigree as Candace.
No, she is royalty.
And so literally, I mean, I remember there was one time where she gave you a Rolex for something and I was like,
really broke it.
Yeah, and you were like, I was like, this is not the guy to give a Rolex to.
No, like I'm wearing a plastic watch right now. Like everything I own is made out of rubber.
Yeah.
No, she, the story I always tell about her is it's like, I never was single when I had money or fame. All I had when I was like single out there mixing it up was this face. Like this is my own, this is
You
it.
have had that face since you were a child. The picture of you and Van on
When we were
his,
little kids.
I go,
Recognizable, right?
that is Casey. That is Casey Neistat to a T.
No, I have
exact same
never
smile.
looked different. But like that was it. And Candace, like we still went out. And like the story I love to tell is like, especially like when I was making the vlog and like our lives got fancy and everybody's like, oh, she just likes him because she's such a bitch in the vlog. It's awesome. Everybody's like,
it's great.
it's such a good character. Everybody's like, she only likes him because he's like, you know, got money and he's got fame. So that's why she likes him. And it's like, little do they know. Like I remember the days when she would come to Connecticut with me because I wouldn't stay in the city on the weekends. So I had to be with my boy. And she would come to Connecticut with me and it was like, look, your choice is you can like stay with me and Owen in my grandmother's like guest bedroom, or we can like, it was really like fucking humiliating. Here's this girl, like her previous boyfriend, like the guy owned like a half a dozen hotels. And I'm like, you know, we got to take the train or the bus to Connecticut and then stay at my Nana's house. And like every once in a while, she would like get us a hotel room that we could stay in. So we'd have like some place to stay with my kid and like use her credit card. You know, I never turned my monetization on my YouTube channel. This is like a fact that most people just don't get. But I did 100 million views before I turned on monetization. Because it to me at the time, and this is wrong, and I fucking regret this, and I'm an idiot for doing this. But I felt like there was some degree of integrity. Like by not monetizing them, I was doing them for the art of it.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Like I'm an idiot for doing that. Don't ever do that. If you do that, I don't think you're an artist. I think you're a fucking idiot. And I was a fucking idiot for doing that. But I didn't mind. So I remember I turned it on. And I remember like the first month, it was like $6,000. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that covers rent and like shit. We got to dinner and daddy's paying.
Yeah.
And then like the next month, it was like $16,000. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like 16 times 12. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And then the next month it was like 60,000. And that's when I was like, uh-oh. And then like, it just didn't stop. And then it's like, you know, it's six figures and multiples. And then the brands start calling. And then like, that was a big shift for me. It's like all that commercial work that I talked about, I did. It was always about my creativity. It was like, write these treatments, like, you know, a pitch deck or like these ideas. Here's my creative idea. The brand would be like, oh, you're so creative. We're excited to work with you. And then none of that discussion. It was just how much for you to talk about our brand on your channel. They weren't paying me for my creativity. They were paying me for my reach.
Wow.
This is going to happen again. I'm going to do this right. And I bought a Jeep with huge trucks, with huge wheels. I bought chains for those wheels. I had it parked in an elevated garage. So no matter how much snow happened, I could get out. I did all of this testing because I had to be able to drive. There had to be enough snow so the NYPD couldn't drive, but I could. Like all of these things. 2 years in a row, we were supposed to get these huge snowstorms. I had an entire crew, my crew, sleep in a hotel so we'd all be together the night before. Not enough snow. And like, that's how much premeditation went into that one video. And when I woke up that morning and there were 26 inches, I was like, let's fucking go. And like, in addition to all of the shit that you could see that was visible, we burned through about $50,000 worth of camera gear because like we'd be shooting with a gimbal, boom, drop it, breaks, run it over, pull the memory card out, trash it, next piece of equipment, go. Like 4 drones lost because there were 40-mile-an-hour winds. It's a blizzard. Yeah. Did we get the shot? No. Go get another one. Get it. Got the shot. Trash it. Take the card. Go. Like over and over and over. And that video is 2.5 minutes long. We started shooting at 7 a.m. We finished the last final shot. It's getting dark outside just to get those perfect shots.
Wow.
Like that video was so incredibly calculated because it was like a fantasy. I was like, this never happens. Like this could be the one moment. And that video to me is still this high watermark because there was a Rangers game the next night. And that video came up on they played it on the Jumbotron in Madison Square Garden.
Serious?
Yes. And the minute the video came up, the crowd burst into applause. Like they were all like the cell phone videos of it. People were just sending them to me. And I was like, fuck, that is it. Oh. That is it. 5 years before I released that video where I'm in the red jacket flying around the city, I did a version of that where it snowed out and I went and snowboarded around behind a friend's pickup truck and like the video did well and like people got a lot of attention. And at that moment I was like, this is going to happen again. I'm going to do this right. And I bought a Jeep with huge trucks, with huge wheels. I bought chains for those wheels. I had it parked in an elevated garage. So no matter how much snow happened, I could get out. I did all of this testing because I had to be able to drive. There had to be enough snow so the NYPD couldn't drive, but I could. Like all of these things. 2 years in a row, we were supposed to get these huge snowstorms. I had an entire crew, my crew, sleep in a hotel so we'd all be together the night before. Not enough snow. And like that's how much premeditation went into that one video. And when I woke up that morning and there were 26 inches, I was like, let's fucking go. And like in addition to all of the shit that you could see that was visible, we burned through about $50,000 worth of camera gear because like we'd be shooting with a gimbal, boom, drop it, brakes, run it over, pull the memory card out, trash it, next piece of equipment, go. Like 4 drones lost because there were 40-mile-an-hour winds. It's a blizzard. Yeah. Did we get the shot? No. Go get another one. Get it. Got the shot. Trash it. Take the card. Go. Like over and over and over. And that video is 2.5 minutes long. We started shooting at 7 a.m. We finished the last final shot. It's getting dark outside just to get those perfect shots.
Wow.
Like that video was so incredibly calculated because it was like a fantasy. I was like, this never happens. Like this could be the one moment. And that video to me is still this high watermark because there was a Rangers game the next night. And that video came up on the, they played it on the Jumbotron in Madison Square Garden.
Serious?
Yes. And the minute the video came up, the crowd burst into applause. Like they were all like the cell phone videos of it. People were just sending them to me. And I was like, fuck, that is it. Oh. That is it. We moved out here because of family. My brother Van lives here. He has a little boy. My sister lives here. My younger brother works here. He's here a lot. Candace's sister, their family's here. Candace's parents are here. So that's a pretty big magnet.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big magnet. And then I had to get out of New York or I was going to lose my mind. And so that's why we came here. And I think immediately, like right off the boat, it felt great. Like it felt special because we moved in this house that was great. We lived at the beach. We'd never lived in a house before. I'd never like had a car that I could actually drive. Go surfing every day. All this like fucking weed is legal here. And I wasn't working. So I just smoked pot every day. Like there was like all this new stuff that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And it started to fade probably like 6 months later.
Yeah.
Like it stopped feeling exciting. And there's something about New York City, like not to sound obnoxious, but there's like a pulse, there's a camaraderie, there's an intangible in that city. I've got my right leg is made out of metal. From the knee up is all titanium here. A motorcycle accident.
Okay.
And then I've got a meniscus that's torn on the other side because it takes all the burden because I've got a metal leg.
Yeah.
And then I just cracked my right heel a month and a half ago. So I'm always broken.
Yeah.
But running is like the constant in my life. I did 8 miles a day before I came here. And it's only because I'm recovering. Otherwise it'd be a 16-mile day.
So every day is a 16-mile day. Because 13 was like your go-to when you were doing the vlog. You were 12, 13 almost every day.
Like a dozen is sort of like my buy-in. Like if I can't do a dozen, I'm not going to go out.
Yeah.
And I go out every day. But like running is my favorite thing. It's one of the only, like I said, surfing, you're sitting out in the middle of the ocean and you're like, this is just for me. Running is to me so meditative. Like once I start going, body just turns off. No thinking, nothing. I don't get tired. I don't get winded. I don't get sore. Like none of that. My body is completely in cruise control. Like if you've ever used autopilot on a Tesla, where you're just like, whoa, it's doing it itself. Like that's what happens to my body. So then it's just like, I can listen to music and think about ideas, or I can like listen to podcasts and think about other people talk about ideas. I can listen to books on tape and learn, which is like my favorite thing. But otherwise I'm just out in nature. I can't run on treadmills.
What was your editing like? How much were you shooting content wise? And what was your editing like? How long did it take you to edit? And did you have a production schedule where you're like, today is going to be, I'm going to go get that leather jacket that I've been wanting to get fixed. And that's today's story. Tomorrow, I want to get a new, how did that work? So
there was never like, it took so much brain power to figure out one episode. I was never able to really plan out. Where it got easy was like traveling. Traveling was always the easiest. You want a 3-act narrative? Fly somewhere. Act 1, get into the fucking airport. Act 2, you're on the plane.
Everything I've ever wanted out of talking to you. You're right, yeah.
Act 3, you arrive. Great fucking story. Like setup, conflict, resolution, perfect. But like when you're in...
Can I just stop you? Your wife getting to an airport drives me fucking insane. Like she's like, what? We have 15 minutes till the plane takes off. We'll make it. like
you have no
those
idea.
videos, I would just sit there and my hands would get wet. I'd be like,
no idea.
She really like just, I want to talk about your wife in a second, but keep going. So talk about the process of editing these videos and making them.
There's so much to talk about with her. She's just a wealth of interestingness. So I was able to plan out in advance because the brain space that day was so intense. But it would be like you brought the leather jacket. Like, I don't know when that was, 2016. I wanted to make this custom jacket and I wanted to reverse engineer this sort of shitty jacket I had and make it custom. And I was like, that's a great story. So when I knew that like I had an appointment that day to go meet with my friend who could get it done, I was like, this is a great story. So I'd be really deliberate in like setting it up, getting there. That's why like riding an electric skateboard is cool, but it's also great content. I knew that. I knew it was like that was a juicy orange I could squeeze so much content out of. So getting there, I was like, okay, that's act 1. Then it's like act 2, meeting with this guy, he's gonna take me to this place, showing the leather, that's great. It's act 2, great, got that in the bag. Act 3, it's like, okay, people are gonna stop caring about this fucking leather jacket. I gotta like take it somewhere else. Okay, act 3 is gonna be me going home and then interacting with the wife and the kid. That's gonna feel like wholesome. That's 3 acts. That's a perfect package. So when you talk about writing, like that was the process of writing and that was in my head. And then all the while, like every time I talked to camera, it was meant to feel super spontaneous and conversational. But like, I think almost without exception, every word that I said, and I mean that literally, like every word, every syllable was somewhat premeditated. How can I say this as concisely as possible? Like right now we're having a genuine conversation. Yeah. I'm not thinking about how to say what I'm trying to say to you, Bert, but then it was like, okay, I gotta say this to the camera. How can I say this in fewest words? How can I say this in a way that's really understandable? How can I say this in a way that makes sense? So like that's how I'm writing in real time. Mm-hmm. So what percentage of that actually made the cut? Like of me speaking to camera, it was high. It was probably 50%. Of like the B-roll, where it's like me setting the stage, showing the environment, leaning into my set, which was New York City, that was more like 20%. I'm always shooting the city. I'm always fixing the camera, putting the tripod down. Yeah. Then there's this careful balance. Like it can't be all handheld. Shaky camera is annoying. It can't be all tripod. It looks too contrived.